You and me stuck on the ocean now, nothing but waves and they're spilling in. I wanna dry up but you just keep on going, don't you? I don't even know how we got here, all my reasoning have disappeared. I wanna bury the hatchet and find the way back to our home.
Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. As you can see from the title, I am finally getting to my August author series wrap up. This was supposed to be done like last week, but honestly, last week and this week, even though it's only Tuesday, have just been like a massive headache for me. I just haven't really been feeling into doing anything at all. I've just been kind of in this slump, so I'm really sorry that this video is late, but it's here and I'm super excited about it. And I'm also going to be combining my September author series announcement in this video as well, just to keep on track with these videos. However, before we get into that, please make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe before you go, and make sure you are following me on my Bookstagram and my Twitter, because I post other bookish content on both of those social media platforms, as well as just other fun content. So make sure you're following me there, and without further ado, let's jump into the video. So before we get started, I'm going to do the same disclaimer that I do in every single one of my videos, and that is if you hear my Great Dane whining or crying, she's not hurt, dying, or anything above. She's absolutely fine. She's just dramatic. Here on this channel, we deal with it. There's a good chance that you could hear one of the other dogs because they've all been really loud today. It's just been like one of those days where my head is exploding. I'm really tired, just haven't been in the mood to really do anything. It's a really gloomy day as well, so it's just been one of those days where I just want to curl up in my bed and do nothing. But obviously, if you are a pet owner, you know that you can't really do that, especially if you have multiple pets. So anyways, that aside, I'm so excited to finally get to do this wrap up for you guys. I kind of went back and forth with myself about if I was going to do it or not, because it wasn't as successful as I originally thought it was going to be. But then I realized, looking back on it and reflecting, I was like, well, actually that speaks volumes for what I'm trying to do here. So without me rambling, just a refresher, my author series that I'm doing is each month I'm picking an author that I'm going to try and read as many of their books as possible. And the point of this is to, at the end of the year, recommend to you guys which author I think is the most binge-worthy author that you should give some attention to, or that you should try reading if you haven't read any of their books before, something along those lines. So the first author that I did for August was Morgan Matson. She is a contemporary YA author, and I absolutely love majority of her books, so I figured she would be a good place to start with. But I realized I've read most of her books probably within like the last 2 years or so, and rereading them now and like revisiting them now, I have different thoughts on them. So I actually have my little notebook here. So as I said, Morgan Madison is a YA contemporary author. She's from New York City. If you didn't know that, thought that was really cool because I have a lot of family that is also from New York, so I liked that. The books that she has written, at least that I know of, are Since You've Been Gone, Amy and Roger's Epic Detour, Second Chance Summer, The Unexpected Everything, and Save the Date. Now, I've read Amy and Roger's Epic Detour, Since You've Been Gone, Second Chance Summer, and I was meandering my way through The Unexpected Everything. I have a copy of Save the Date, but I haven't read it just yet. I will put on the screen what I rated each one of those books out of 5, just so you guys kind of have an idea of where I was going with it. But for this particular series, I'm not going through each individual book, but I'm more so focusing on the author's writing style themselves. So that way, it's kind of like when you're able to binge watch a Netflix series because the content is just so good, you can sit there and literally watch it all day long. I'm essentially looking for the book version of that, or the author version of that. So I'm not rating each individual book, but more so their collected works as a whole, and deciding whether or not they're binge worthy. Now, obviously, this is my opinion. You guys can take with it and do with it as you will, but it is just down to my opinion. So that being said, I really wanted to get through The Unexpected Everything, but I couldn't really get into it. I'm gonna keep going with it, but I really just couldn't get into it the way that I wanted to, which was really sad. But yeah, I'm gonna keep working through it. So let's get into my thoughts. So I'm gonna be rating this. I believe I said I'm gonna be rating the author out of 10, and then the binge worthiness out of 5. So stick with me and that'll make sense. So the first thing that I want to talk about before we get into the rating is her style of writing. So Morgan Matson has a very detailed style of writing. Nothing is ever straight to the point with her. So for an example, in The Unexpected Everything, there's a main character meeting her friends for breakfast at a diner, but there's like a whole backstory as to why they chose this specific diner and that specific table. And it's just like, it's a lot of detail for what really could have been summarized in what I feel in like 2 or 3 sentences. I think it was like almost 2.5 pages summarizing like why they have chosen this diner with this specific corner booth seats, and just it's a lot. So she's got very, very detailed writing. She also, what was I saying? She's constantly setting the scene. So, you see it a lot in fantasy books where, the first couple chapters, the author is setting the scene, and then you can kind of work your way into the story, and it's really fast paced from there. That's not what you get with Morgan Matson. She is literally setting the scene throughout the entire book. So you're going to get, again, just a lot of detail and a lot of backstory for what could just be miscellaneous things. You're going to get a backstory for them anyways. She does write amazingly in-depth and mature characters. I think all of her books deal with teenage to young adult characters, so I'd say probably somewhere between the 16 to 19 at the oldest range, and they're all incredibly mature and written with such depth and go through such growth throughout the story that it's really, really nice and very intriguing to read about, and you're not bored with her characters, albeit you may not like all of her characters, but you understand why they're there. Like, each character does have a point at somewhere throughout the story. It's not just like a thrown in character in there just to add, just for the sake of throwing in a character. She doesn't do that, and I really enjoy that about it. Her contemporaries can appear fluffy from the synopsis, but when you start getting into it, there usually is a hard-hitting plot point that you're going through. Sometimes you've got like a strange familial ties. Even when it's like relationships in high school, they're still very mature for a high school relationship, I feel. And it's not to say that it's unrealistic. I think a lot of times YA contemporary doesn't give young adults and teenagers enough credit for just being a little bit more mature than what they're portrayed in the book. So I really do admire how Morgan Matson portrays her characters and the depth behind them, as well as the plot point as well. So, and I have, for an example for here, there was Amy and Roger's epic Detour, which from the synopsis, you could kind of maybe gather that it was more so just like a fluffy love story, road trip type of thing. But there was a lot of familial issues going on behind the scenes, and a lot of things that the main character had to work out and really come to terms with who she was and how she wanted to like go through the second stage of her life. So, or I guess the next stage of her life. I don't want to say the next stage of her life, which was really good. And then we're going to get into the prose. So the prose of Morgan Matson's writing, the stories are always complete. You're never left thinking, okay, well, you know what, that was left unattended to, and I'm not really happy with that. Or, there's an issue here that was solved, but it was just kind of like a flimsy type of solution. Like, there wasn't really any thought put into it. That's not what you get with her stories. The whole story is complete. Everything comes to a head quite nicely, and there's always, again, some solution. Even if you don't like it, there is a complete solution for it, and you understand why that was the solution, which I do like. You get to see cameos of other characters within her story. So now you don't have to read her stories in any particular order to understand them. That's not what it is. They're all individual stories, but you do get to see cameos. So for Amy and Roger's epic Detour, you got to see Amy and Roger for a scene in, I believe it was Since You've Been Gone or Second Chance Summer. They appeared in one of those books. It was just like a quick thing, and it was really cute. It was just like a really, I don't want to say nostalgic moment, but kind of, because I had read Amy and Roger's epic Detour was the first Morgan Matson book I ever read, and then I didn't read her again for a couple months, and then I read I think it was Since You've Been Gone that they appeared in, and it was just really cute to kind of see those characters again. So I like cameos a lot. I know that's probably a little bit superficial and really not that important, but I really do enjoy cameos that if an author can incorporate those into their books. I just think it's fun. No one does contemporary road trips like Morgan Matson. That is for damn sure. I have read many a contemporary road trip. And Morgan Matson absolutely did it the best. Amy and Roger's epic Detour is the road trip contemporary to end all road trip contemporaries. It is absolutely phenomenal. You guys know that I read The Geography of Lost Things earlier this year and I absolutely hated it. It was just god awful. I think it's because I compare it to Amy and Roger's epic Detour. And I hold road trip contemporary at a really, really high standard. So yeah, she does it brilliantly. It's really, really good story. The familial relationship that she has in her stories is always a unique one, which I do admire as well. So how do I don't want to give anything away because I don't want to spoil any of the stories if you haven't read it, but I guess I can do it for the unexpected everything because it's in the synopsis. So our main character, you're looking at our main character's relationship with her political figurehead father, and the relationship between the two of them is very estranged. And then you kind of also get a little bit of, I'm going to leave it there because I don't want to get into too much of it, but yeah, so you've got a political figurehead for a father and then his daughter that you're following her story with. And it's really cool. I like how she does it. Yeah, she does it in a unique way with lots of twists and turns, and it's really, really fun because you think you're going into it when you think that maybe the main character is just being really, really bratty and kind of mean. And then you get the backstory as to why she is behaving this way, and you're like, okay, you know what, that makes sense. So the familiar relationships are really cool that she does. Now for the cons. Every single one of her books is long, and you guys know how I feel about overly long books. I prefer short, concise writing. I think it's just easier to get through, and the faster you can get to the point for me, the better. So that being said, a lot of people don't understand why I like Morgan Matson, and to be fair, I don't even understand why, but I do. I absolutely love her writing. It's just, her books just feel complete to me, and they're worth the read. But that being said, they are very long. Her shortest one is 343 pages, which isn't that bad, but then her longest contemporary is 520 pages. In what universe does a YA contemporary need to be 520 pages? Go ahead, I'll wait. I'll tell you, in Morgan Matson's universe, it needs to be 520 pages. Mind you, now you got to sit there and ask yourself, does it need to be 520 pages? I personally say no. But if you like really long, chunky books, then I guess you might say yes. But for me, that is definitely a con. These are not quick reads. If you try and rush through a Morgan Matson book, you're just going to get frustrated with yourself because the way that she writes, which is very detailed, you can't really rush through it. You got to just kind of sit there, take your time, and go through it as you will, and just, really just take your time with the book. Rushing through a Morgan Matson book is not the way to read it at all, at least not in my opinion. You're not going to get the full experience that she's trying to provide for you there. Now, okay, so that being said, with all the pros and cons, we're going to go into the binge-worthy ranking. So I have binge-worthy ranking like out of 10 points. So I gave her a point for interesting characters, a point for a plot that's engaging, a point for underlining deep messages, it's not just a fluffy contemporary, so I gave her a point for that. I took away 2 points for a lack of diversity. That is probably my biggest issue with Morgan Matson books. There's really not a lot of diversity in her books. If any, in some of them, I'm trying to recall. I don't want to say there's not. I think there might be some side characters that are people of color, but on a whole, the fact that I have to think this hard for a character that is not white is a little bit discouraging. So I took away 2 points for that. The diversity in her books really is not there, or not up to par for my liking. I also took a point away for the length of her books because they're overly detailed. Mind you, again, that's not going to be a con for some people, but when I'm looking for a binge-worthy author, one that you can devour majority of their works in a month, that is a point that I would deduct for that because it makes it really hard to get through all of her books in a timely manner when they're 500 plus pages. So I took away a point for that. I gave her a point for her writing style. It does flow very nicely. I love the way she writes. Yeah, I like the way that she writes. It flows really nicely. It's easy to read, but not in a way that you feel like you're reading a YA contemporary, if that's what, or not in a way that makes you feel like you're reading YA, if that makes sense. It's very mature writing that I do enjoy. I'm trying to compare it to, okay, so I think it was the Unrequited Love or something by Becky Albertalli. It was a book by Becky Albertalli that I couldn't get through. I DNF'd it. It's like the exact opposite writing style of that, if you've read that book. I also gave her a point for believability in her contemporaries. You don't really have to have, okay, you kind of have to have a suspension of disbelief, but it is fiction, so I feel like no matter what fiction book you read, you're going to have a little bit of a suspension of disbelief, but it's not crazy. Like, everything that she's writing about could happen in some capacity, which I do like. 1 point for positive female and male characters. None of her characters were like overly toxic, or none of the relationships that she talks about are overly toxic or anything like that, save for Save the Day, because I haven't read that one just yet. But the characters are positive. There's a lot of growth going through it, and they're very, like I keep saying, I keep repeating myself, but they're very mature, and they just, you know how, I guess the best way that I can think to do this is like the Twilight characters, who some are just blatantly very, very toxic and not healthy beings to really idolize. You don't get that with Morgan Matson. Obviously, Twilight is not a contemporary, but you get what I'm saying. The characters are ones that I would say are positive, and I wouldn't have a problem recommending her books to, say, like a 15, 16-year-old. And I wouldn't have to worry about, okay, you know what, that's really not the correct way to portray a relationship, or the correct way to portray a male teenage boy or something along those lines. Now, mind you, obviously the characters are not perfect, but they're not so toxic that I would be like, you probably shouldn't be YA. You don't get that, which is nice. So I gave her a point for that. I also gave her a point for her endings. I love when endings are wrapped up very nicely. Even if I don't like the ending, the ending has to make sense, and all of the endings in her books do make sense. So that's also really nice. I gave her a point for that. So yeah, overall, she got a 7 out of 10 for binge-worthy. Sorry, what's that? Binge-worthy ranking. Yeah. So she got a 7 out of 10 overall for like a binge-worthy ranking. Now, and then I did another 5-point ranking for like compared to the other binge-worthy authors. So this is where, at the end of the year, where she'll rank with the other 4 authors that I do. So that 10-point ranking is just for her herself, like that author itself. And then this 5-point ranking is what I'm going to use to compare the authors to each other. So the 7 out of 10 is I think that's a really good score. I would recommend her as an author and just her complete works in general. I think they're really good. They take a second to get into, but they are still good. And now for like her binge-worthy ranking out of 5 compared to everyone, like to the other authors that I'm going to be doing. I took away a point because it's not fast-paced. None of her books are fast-paced at all, and I feel like that's really, really important. If you're gonna have a binge-worthy type of read going on, like, you want the book to keep moving. You don't want to be sitting there kind of like waiting hours on end for something to happen or for a scene to be set. So I took a point away from that. Grips your attention, I gave her half a point because she does grip your attention, but she takes a second to do it. Condensed but detailed, I took a point away from that because it's not condensed at all. Very, very detailed, but not condensed. Good characters, I gave her a point because her characters are awesome. The plot is laid out, again, half a point because the plot is laid out, but it takes time for her to lay the plot out. And then I have like a bonus point for surprise endings, which you don't really get for her. You can pretty much see her endings coming, so she didn't get that. So overall, for binge-worthy compared to other authors, I would say she's a 2 out of 5. Now, let me make this perfectly clear. This does not mean that she's a bad author or that her books are horrible, which is why I did the 10-point ranking just before this one, because I know somebody in the comments is going to misconstrue what I'm saying. The 10-point ranking is for how I feel about that author themselves and their writing. That is a 10-point ranking. The 5-point ranking is how I feel for them as a binge-worthy author. Morgan Matson, I think, is an amazing author, but not amazing for binge-worthy reads. So that's why she got the 2 out of 5 for binge-worthy reads, but a 7 out of 10 for just an overall ranking of her books and her writing style and so on and so forth. So that's how those two things work there. Now, obviously, I would argue that in order to be classified as a really good binge-worthy author, you need to have at least a 4 out of 5. But because I haven't rated any other author just yet, she's currently in first place. Yay! But yeah, that's my thoughts on the August author wrap-up. I really, really enjoyed doing it, and I'm super excited for my September August series announcement, which I'm going to do right now. Okay, so for my September author series announcement thing, I have to figure out a better title for this series that I'm doing. Comment down below title names that I can use for this series, because it's just like, I can't, the author series, I don't know if I like that. Give me name suggestions. But anyways, my September author that I'm going to be doing is Trisha Levinseller. She is the author of Daughter of the Pirate King, Daughter of the Siren Queen, The Shadows Between Us, and something with Vikings. The wild, oh, not Wilder Girls, no. Something wild, something with Vikings, but those are the ones that her main ones that are out. So I'm going to be making my way through as many of those books as I possibly can for September. Being that it is September 8th, I've already gotten through one of them, that is Daughter of the Pirate King. So I'm going to keep making my way through and see how far I can get with that at the end of the month, and then I will do my author wrap up for Trisha Levinseller the last week of September. Hopefully, if I can stay on track, it'll be the last week of September, so stay tuned. All right, everybody, that brings us to the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it to the end, you are a real MVP. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe before you go, and make sure you're following me on my Instagram and my Twitter so you can keep up to date with all my other content that I'm posting, and look out for my September author series wrap up that will hopefully come in September this time, opposed to August coming in September. But yeah, it's fine. We got it done, so we're good. Yeah, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.